Fáilte. Welcome to the Village Oak Tree. I'm your host, Terrance Ó Domhnaill. Thank you for joining me again this week. I'm going to revisit climate change again this week. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago, but that was before Trump and Netanyahu decided to start bombing Iran and creating a global oil and soon a global food crisis. The world won't really see the effects of this until harvest season later this year, but it will ripple forward through next winter and into 2027. So gather around, sit you down somewhere comfortable for a bit as I lay out what's coming as far as the warming climate is concerned for this year and beyond. Almost everybody has heard of climate change or global warming by now. It's been a fixture in the media for years, and there are millions of people around the world who are feeling the effects of global warming a lot more lately. The poorest among us may not understand the science behind it, but they do know that their world is changing dramatically. And I think back through the decades of my life and about all the different places around the world I've been to in my travels. I never really thought about climate change all that much until the last 15 to 20 years or so. March, 26 years ago, I had just moved to Aroostook County, Maine, after recently completing Army active duty at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. My military service was up after nearly 25 years, and I needed a quiet, low cost of living place to relocate to with my then family. Caribou, Maine offered that to a degree, but it was far from idyllic. Northern Maine has always been notorious for Arctic temperatures and lots of snow in winter months. I knew this because I lived on a poor farm about 15 miles north of Caribou back in the late 1960s and early 1970s. That and its isolation from the rest of the country kept the county poor, still poor to today. For the first few years there, after we bought a small house a couple of miles outside of town, the climate was everything I remembered from my childhood and more. Lots of snow and cold. It started right after Samhain and lasted until after Beltane. For the farmers up there, the planting season usually starts in mid-May, as they have to wait until the fields are cleared of snow and the mud dries out enough to plant. I've seen at times snow patches still in the shadowy places out in the woods by mid to the end of May. The bogs and mud were still a thing by Memorial Day most of the time. Then by 2013, I started to see a shift in the winter weather patterns. Not as much snow accumulation, but bitterly cold winds and temperatures staying close to minus 25 Fahrenheit or colder for weeks on end. This went on for the last couple of winters I spent up there until I moved to Central Texas on April 1st of 2015. The day I left my old house in Caribou for the last time, it was a cold, rainy day, and there were still good-sized snowbanks alongside my driveway as we started our journey to Texas. After we left Northern Maine experienced a climate shift. My friends who still live up there today had told me that the winter started becoming milder right after we left. Less snow accumulation and mean temperatures warmer than what we remember from previous years. I mean, that's good for them as the price of heating their house didn't cost as much anymore. Them and all the other people living up there. The down East Coast, on the other hand, was a different story. I have a younger brother who lives down that way in Maine, and his climate stories were different. As the winters up north became milder, he started experiencing more nor'easters and ice storms down where he lives, closer to the ocean. This lasted until a couple of winters ago, when things started turning back the other way again. By this time, we had left Texas and moved to Central Virginia in November of 2020. We've noticed the climate swings in Texas and here as well. Our first couple of winters in Virginia were pretty normal, according to my new neighbors, until they started changing for the worse. In Texas, they've been dealing with significant major weird weather events since we first moved there in 2015. The last two winters here in Central Virginia have been colder than people remember in a long while, and the plumbers have been very busy managing more frozen water pipes than before. The houses built here within the last 20 years or so were not built for real cold weather, so the home heating bills have skyrocketed because houses don't have enough insulation in the attics and walls needed to keep the cold air out. Being from Northern Maine, that's one of the first things I did when we bought this house, was to add extra insulation to the attic spaces. Now think about what I'm telling you. Take my personal experiences and multiply that by billions of other people in North America, Northern Europe, and Northern Asia. A lot of us have heard of polar vortexes by now because that definition has also been thrown around nearly as much as global warming and climate change in the last few years. As it turns out, the climate scientists have been right. As the Arctic warms up, because more of the sun's radiation is hitting the ice up there, it's been driving the polar winds south to make us all shiver and shovel more snow during the winters in the last few years. I noticed it here where I live 2 winters ago. We started seeing more snowstorms. And as I said, we've had more and more days of single digit outside temps in December and January. People are starting to scratch their heads in wonderment, is this the new normal now, they're asking? The answer is no. According to 2 articles I found since last week's podcast, we can expect more hot, dry weather in the southwest and western parts of North America and in parts of Europe closer to the equator. The snowpack in the western parts of North America this last winter was way short of previous normals based on previous years, which will only exacerbate the already ongoing mega drought they've been experiencing in the last several years. It's March, and Arizona, New Mexico, and Southern California are already experiencing mean outdoor temps in the 90s and a not normal heat wave. It was pretty warm here for early March in the mid-Atlantic states as well, till a couple of days ago. We're having another polar vortex weather event here now with a small afternoon snowfall last Thursday. The nighttime outdoor temps are supposed to drop down to the freezing mark this week after a major storm alert last weekend, telling us to be on guard for high winds, maybe as high as 100 miles an hour, major thunderstorms and tornado warnings, which we had Monday night. And yeah, the temperatures did drop down to the freezing mark here yesterday morning and this morning. There is no such thing as normal weather anymore. The scientists are predicting that by 2030, the mean average outdoor temperature planet-wide will be about 1.7 C by then. I remember a few years ago when they told us that we wouldn't see that until 2050 or beyond. Oops, I guess they missed that mark by a couple of decades. What that means for the planet as a whole are more droughts, wildfires, and mass starvations in the equatorial zones as the water wars take off in earnest because fresh water is evaporating and not returning. The planet's ability to grow enough food for the 8 billion humans, not to mention the other life around us, is decreasing more and more every year. Animal life is starting to die off and go extinct with little to replace them, according to another ecological report I read about. Tehran, Iran, was nearly on the brink of no water early last summer as the river that normally kept them hydrated nearly ran dry. The Colorado River in the U.S. has been on the brink of disappearing for several years now, with western states fighting over water rights. China is building mega dams on their rivers in the Himalayas to take care of its people at the expense of the people in that part of India. You can bet there will be water wars in the near future over that. There have been near wars between countries on the lower Nile in North Africa because Ethiopia decided to build a huge dam for their people at the expense of their neighbors. And so it goes. As the glaciers in the high mountain ranges around the world melt and disappear, this will only get worse. Not enough water means not enough food, which means a lot more climate refugees migrating to places that still have water, or so they think. And more wars over controlling resources such as water and to deter mass migrations. The new war in Iran is only going to speed up the collapse of what the world thought was normal. As countries like the United States, with someone like Trump at the helm, decide that just taking what they want by military force is a good thing to do, the faster the collapse is going to happen. Think about all the toxic dust and smoke being blasted up in the atmosphere by all the bombings and burning buildings. One of the biggest things that's speeding things up is people like Trump and Zelensky from Ukraine who only care about themselves, who aren't doing anything or are stripping away the very infrastructure that would help mitigate global warming to a degree. Most climate scientists now agree that humans have pushed the planet's ecosystem past the point of, stopping climate change. All we can do is try and slow it down now. But countries with leaders like Trump and those other autocratic countries around the world could care less about global warming. It's not making them personally wealthier in the short term, and to them, that's all that matters right now. Trump will be 80 years old this year. He doesn't care about what the climate is going to look like in 4 years. He'll be rich enough to not even think about it by then. He lives in a wealthy bubble that insulates him from any of the negative effects of global warming. So does Russia's Putin, Ukraine's Zelensky, the wealthy oil sheiks of the Gulf states in the Middle East, and so many others who can just buy their artificial climate control and never have to worry about going hungry as long as the money holds out. Not that they're thinking they'll ever run out of lots of money. Far from it. Think about all the money that the Ukrainian government officials have outright stolen from the U.S. during the war with Russia. Not that the Russian government is full of saints either. The Russian oligarchs are the cause of much of the corruption there, going back to when Putin first took over the government in the 1990s. Which leaves the rest of us to suffer from the devastating wildfires that cross national borders, monsoon rains that dump deluges in short bursts that flood whole regions, then dry up by the start of the hot season. There are some people in the know who are starting to predict that if the war with Iran keeps going on for a long period, say more than 30 days or more, there will be noticeable food shortages around the world by the end of this year, going into next year and beyond. This will be caused by the inability of the world's farmers to grow enough food to feed everyone. There are already major food shortages in places like Sudan and Central Africa and the surrounding regions. There will be very noticeable food shortages in the grocery stores of the U.S. and Europe by late fall of this year, some analysts are predicting. All because of the tariffs and the farmers' inability to grow enough food for everyone. The loss of fertilizer in the U.S. from the Middle East and Canada will be felt by the average food consumers in the U.S. by the end of the harvest season this year, so some are predicting. The EU will feel it sooner. Right now, there are genocidal famine events taking place around the world, most notably in Sudan and Gaza. These are largely man-made, but there's not much will around the world to step in and help. There's lots of hand-wringing by the NGOs, but little government help to bring food to the starving masses. In the case of Gaza, they send the food to the borders of Gaza, but refuse to force Israel to let it go through without a direct confrontation, which no one will do. As for Sudan, the warring factions make it hard for food to get in without casualties, which no one will support. Nobody wants to get killed delivering food. Now imagine large amounts of people starving to death in the United States, like in Gaza and Sudan. In certain parts of the country, there are pockets of people living in areas that are on the brink. They're living with food insecurity because the Trump government has taken away the food assistance they need to keep from starving. Instead, as a lot of journalists are pointing out, Trump is spending billions of taxpayer money on a vanity war in Iran. He's throwing billions at Israel so they can defend themselves, quote, from the Arab terrorists. They're throwing money away on the corrupt government of Kiev, Ukraine, and killing and kidnapping people it doesn't like in South America. He's spending taxpayer money on personal vanity projects like he's spending on like the East Wing Ballroom, the proposed arch in front of the Lincoln Memorial, and paying to hang large banners on government buildings in D.C. and adding his name to the building names. So much for America first. My wife and I are starting to plan this year's vegetable garden now. The weather's still pretty iffy to put any seeds in the ground yet, but we are going to sit down and start deciding what to plant. I'm advocating for more vegetables that can be stored long term this year. We have an extra freezer to help with that, but I also want vegetables that we can dry out and store for the long term, like certain beans. Besides that, only because we don't have the farm acres to grow a whole lot, we're stocking up on dry pasta and other long-term storage food items in case we get hit with food shortages next winter. As long as wheat pasta remains at $1 a box, I'll continue to stock up, along with other low-cost, long-term storage items. I personally know what it's like to go hungry for days at a time. It's not fun. Situations were forced on me while I was in the military at different times of my career, but you never forget something like that. Food shortages will definitely help you lose weight, but the downside is constant stomach pain and mental nagging to find food. That nagging in your brain can become all-consuming after a couple of days until your body adjusts to the new low-calorie diet or lack thereof. During the U.S. Great Depression of the 1930s, the food shortages were so bad, there were roving groups of homeless people migrating across the country, taking food any way they could get it. Whether it was from soup kitchens and bread lines or just stealing whatever they could find, it's not something people would talk about much back then. It's all mostly forgotten, as the people who lived through all that are all about dead in it by now. My own parents and grandparents lived through that, and some of the stories they told me are pretty dark. They've all passed on now, but I remember the stories they told me. I fear the U.S. is heading back to those dark times now. We already have food banks on the brink of going under because Trump cut off federal government support last year. With the government domestic food aid programs being cut, if and when food shortages come next winter, the U.S. may have its own famine to deal with. Given how Trump handled the COVID pandemic in the U.S. in his first term, we know what to expect from him when U.S. citizens begin starving in large numbers. There's another thing I should add to this equation. Hungry people become angry people. In past history, when enough citizens became hungry enough, they've been known to violently revolt and topple governments. The two most striking examples are the French Revolution in 1789 and Tsarist Russia in 1917. Lesser well-known revolutions were the Chinese Great Leap Forward policies between 1959 to 1961, where anywhere from 15 to 55 million people died of starvation, all because of stupid agricultural and industrial policies. Does this sound a little familiar right now? There is a No Kings protest scheduled for March 28th across the country. This would be a good time to go out and protest Trump's disastrous foreign and domestic policies that may cause actual famine-like conditions in the supposed wealthiest country in the world. I watched an MS Now news segment last Saturday with Ali Velshi, and it was all about the wealth disparity in the U.S. between all the billionaires that have cropped up in the last couple of decades. As angry as Americans can get when they feel impassioned about something, I can actually see a time in the near future when the people decide, like the French did in 1789, to take matters into their own hands. A lot of billionaires might find themselves hanging from tree limbs and lampposts, to include the wealthy politicians. If that should happen, a lot of people would die in the Civil War, and the United States will most likely have a new style of government by the time the billionaire purges were over. History does have a way of repeating itself in spectacular ways at times. Vive l'American Revolution. I hope I've given everyone listening or reading some things to think about once again this week. Feel free to reach out. Let me know your thoughts. Take a moment to listen to me talk about making a donation or subscribing or buying a book via my website. And I'll return with another episode of I was going to read another episode of The Priest, but I'm going to give you a really nice poem instead. My friend in Bulgaria wrote a really great one here this week, and she's graciously allowed me to read it to you, which I will do so after the break. During this break, I want to take a couple of minutes to explain how you can support this podcast and introduce my website at www.crownabeja.com. One way is to become a paid subscriber to my Substack page. You can also find the Village Oak Tree on medium.com and YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the videos there as well. The best way is to make a donation through my website. I accept donations of any amount in most currencies, which viewers can visit using the QR code at the top left showing. The website is also listed in the scrolling banner at the bottom of this video. If you're listening to an audio version of the podcast in one of the many mobile apps available, use the link in the podcast description. I've made the website more mobile friendly to view now, so go check it out. So let's go to the website. Click the home button at the bottom here, the first page, and it'll take you to the home page. And at the top, you'll see it has a Google Translator first thing, and then a little information about Gaelic traditions, and a little bit about myself here at the bottom. On the menu bar at the top, there's a blog section. And this is where I write about the things that's on my mind about once a week or so. It's all a lot of it more from a personal viewpoint. Then there's a photography section. And this is where I show pictures of all my misadventures from my youthful days, different places around the world and the United States, some of my military exploits. And then there's a online store. And here I've got books for sale and different categories of digital photographs that I've taken from around the country. Those are for sale, digitally downloaded, and reasonably priced. Now, there's also a donate and more page. And it's a drop down with podcasts, a little bit more of a detailed bio, and the donation page. If there's any questions, I've set up several methods for visitors to reach out to me directly, whether by social media or by direct mail using the contact page. And there's even a little tech support here. So you want to send me an email, fill this out, and follow the instructions. And you're all set. If you just want to do social media, as you can see, I've got 4 links here and a couple more that you actually have to go search me out on. I hope people watching and listening to this podcast or reading the commentary will take a moment and come visit me at crownofbeha.com. I might even have something you like and you want to come back for more. Welcome back. So let me pull up Maria's poem here. I'm going to do a screen share. All right, so this gives you an idea. You can kind of read along a little bit here. Her poem is entitled Diverging Paths and the Brightest Truth That Heals the Soul by Mariana Bosarova. As I mentioned, she's from Bulgaria and writes a lot of poetry. I read everything she puts out. I used to publish almost everything that she had, but now I'm gotten more selective here. In 100 directions I wandered, none mine, yet perhaps my pale soul was a nomad for life. It met rivers, quite raging, landslides in decline, learned in time how to starve in the harshest of strife. In a quiet lie, dressed in words of soft fare, slipped with rain through the pulse of a dull ashen day. And my soul rose again, full, alive, debonair, and life pounded wild, swept in madness away. In those 100 directions were stilled in embrace, an embrace much like Judas, so tender, so warm, it felt shelter of passion and a miracle's grace, and with a soft woven blanket for thoughts in the storm. But the world fell apart like a house made of cards, and the lie showed at last its disfigured true face. Rain dissolved, just a whisper on asphalts and shards, while a heart broken scattered its pieces in place. In those 100 directions, I found my way, like a beam of bright light in the darkest of hours. When one has been wounded and brought to their knees, still a quiet truth speaks with its resolute powers. She goes on, talks a little bit about why she wrote the poem and a little bit about it. But still, I hope it resonates, given everything that's going on right now. Guru Mahagat, thank you for watching or listening to the show today. I hope you enjoyed it, and you'll return again to listen to me offer a voice to what a lot of people are thinking these days. To say goodbye this week, I will leave you with this quote from Nobel Peace Prize winner Al Gore. Quote, "The warnings about global warming have been extremely clear for a long time. We are facing a global climate crisis. It is deepening. We are entering a period of consequences." Unquote. Slongo Foyle.